CBC Vancouver News.
We know this is circulating globally in obviously in wild birds, and there's of course this very large outbreak.
A BC teen is being treated for what's believed to be the first human case of avian flu contracted in Canada. More on the work that's underway to figure out how they caught it. Also,
we're just happy because it's going to bring up so many more opportunities for us, and yeah, it's exciting.
the NCAA has lifted a long-standing ban on Canadian Hockey League players, how it's opening up new pathways for junior athletes here in BC. And
just think about the world that created the war that caused this incredible cenotaph.
it's watched over Remembrance Day ceremonies for 100 years. We dive into the history of Vancouver's Victory Square cenotaph. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Janella Hamilton. BC health officials continue to investigate what's believed to be the first case of avian flu caught in Canada. As Yvette Brend reports, the news comes after a series of outbreaks in BC and Washington state, mostly driven by contamination from migrating birds.
Canada has what's believed to be its first human case of avian flu, caught by a teenager in BC's Fraser Valley. What isn't known is how the young person got infected.
We have to obviously take this very seriously.
The teen is being treated at BC Children's Hospital while public health workers follow up with their contacts. Provincial Health Officer Bonnie Henry says they're conducting a thorough investigation to fully understand the source of exposure here in BC. Health officials say the likely source is an infected animal or bird.
There's no indication of any human cases associated with a BC farm at this time.
6.4 million birds have been infected on BC farms, and there have been outbreaks on American farms, including in nearby Washington state.
We moved to our highest level of biosecurity on October the 16th, when we were seeing other cases in neighboring jurisdictions.
Migrating birds drive the spread with what they leave behind.
We know this is circulating globally in obviously in wild birds, and there's of course this very large outbreak. We know that political borders don't stop the spread of infectious diseases.
While human cases of avian flu are rare, more than 40 have been detected in the U.S. this year.
Most have been on the milder end of the spectrum, but we know that this is a virus that has potential to cause significant clinical harm.
In 2014, a Canadian resident died after likely being infected in China. There is no vaccine for avian flu, but experts say a seasonal flu shot could still be helpful. It can prevent mutations that infect more humans.
There might be an opportunity for these viruses to exchange genetic material.
But the best advice, stay away from sick birds.
I try to stay away from wildlife, just respect their environments and keep a distance. I'm also terrified of birds, so by default I keep my distance regardless.
Yvette Brend, CBC News, Vancouver.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has called for a by-election in the federal riding of Cloverdale-Langley City. It comes a little under 6 months after former MP John Aldag resigned to run for the BC NDP in the provincial election, a race he ultimately lost. The riding of Cloverdale-Langley City has swung between the Liberal Party and the federal Conservatives in the two previous elections. Elections Canada says there will be 4 advanced voting days from December 6th to 9th. Polls close on December 16th. Last week, the NCAA lifted a long-standing restriction that will now allow players with Canadian junior hockey experience to compete at U.S. colleges starting next season. As Sohrab Sandhu reports, the decision has the potential to shake up hockey in BC.
Number 88 Miller Brookshaw plays defense for the Delta Ice Hawks. He says he's excited at the prospect of playing college hockey in the U.S.
We're just happy because it's going to bring up so many more opportunities for us, and yeah, it's exciting.
For decades, hockey players who earned an allowance or a stipend through the Canadian Junior Hockey League were not allowed to compete at U.S. colleges and universities. But last week, the National Collegiate Athletic Association lifted that ban.
Being open to CHL players and major junior players obviously opens up many avenues for the players to have different hockey opportunities outside of Canadian universities. It gives them the opportunity to pursue U.S. hockey scholarships.
Under the old system, they have to choose at 16 or 17 if they're going to go through major junior, which was deemed to be a professional league. Now they don't have to make that choice until later in life.
Epstein says this development means Canadian university sports will face competition from the NCAA to attract the best prospects. In a written statement, UBC Athletics agreed the recent NCAA announcement will increase competition, but says it remains committed to pursuing the best student athletes. But it's not just universities and colleges which may feel the impact. Experts say even Canadian junior leagues would have a harder time competing for the best talent in the pool.
I don't know how it plays out, to be honest with you, but I do think that the caliber of talent coming to Western Hockey League cities is going to be immense.
We've been preparing for this for over 4 years. We've been a league that's been around for 63 years. We're going to have to make some changes. We're going to have to adapt, just like any other business model.
Commissioner Neer is advising any NCAA scholarship hopefuls to be aware of the rules.
Make sure you know all the circumstances. Make sure you know about the transfer portal, and if that leaves you vulnerable, make sure you know if your scholarship is guaranteed. If they're promising NIL money, make sure you know if you're eligible to get it as a Canadian citizen.
The changes go into effect on August 1st. Saurabh Sandhu, CBC News, White Rock.
Environment Canada says heavy rain and winds could cause power outages on Vancouver Island and the Sunshine Coast as an intense storm system rolls in. The weather agency has issued wind warnings for Haida Gwaii and parts of the coast, with gusts expected to get up to 90 kilometers an hour. And for Howe Sound and parts of Metro Vancouver, heavy rain is coming overnight, with up to 70 millimeters of rain expected in North and West Vancouver. Burnaby, Abbotsford, and elsewhere in the Fraser Valley will also see strong winds and heavy rainfall into tomorrow afternoon. All right, let's take a look now at our full forecast. Let's begin with the temperatures around the province tonight. -10 in Dease Lake, -4 in Fort St. John, much wetter in Kamloops and Kelowna with a low of 6 overnight, and 7 on the island in Tofino, 9 in Victoria. A lot of that precipitation covering most of the province overnight and into tomorrow morning. Dease Lake is going to dry up with a -7 for tomorrow, 0 in Fort St. John, 13 and rainy in Kamloops, 8 in Kelowna, and on the island, Tofino, chances of thunderstorms there with lots of rain covering many different parts of the island overnight, and a high of 11 for Tofino. Similar conditions in Victoria for tomorrow. Same here in Metro Vancouver. 10 is our high for tomorrow. Lots of rain and a chance of thunderstorms into tomorrow morning. That rain is going to stick around for Tuesday and the majority of next week. This year marks the 100th anniversary of the cenotaph at Vancouver's Victory Square. Today it honors the sacrifices made by all veterans in the Canadian Armed Forces, but historically not all of those who were enlisted were recognized at the site. Attention! In the shadow of this granite column, dignitaries have laid wreaths, bands have played marches, and Indigenous drummers and singers have performed ceremonies on the very spot where hundreds of men once signed up for World War I.
In 1914, there was a courthouse here, and there were tables set up, and hundreds of young Vancouver men volunteered to go overseas and fight in the First World War, and many of them did not come back.
Built in 1924, the monument at the corner of Hastings and Cambie Streets has seen generations honor those who have served in the Canadian military.
There were very, very few families, in Vancouver, I mean in Canada, who were not one way or another directly affected by the loss, by the maiming, by the shell shock.
For many, this cenotaph represents the diverse contributions that have shaped Canada's history. But it hasn't always been that way. For decades, people of color were excluded from laying wreaths at cenotaphs.
When they came back, they lost their status as Indigenous people. When they came back, they weren't eligible for benefits that every other veteran was, housing, education.
Métis Navy veteran Tom Adams says he's glad to see the contributions of Indigenous veterans and the obstacles they faced finally gain recognition. He feels the cenotaph represents that long-awaited acknowledgement.
It signifies that we're finally being recognized as veterans in this country, and that we are being honored for what we have done for our country.
Over the years, the faces of those who have taken part in ceremonies at the pillar have changed. Veterans of older wars are no longer there. Younger veterans stand in their places.
It's extremely important that people think beyond their immediate lives and just think about the world that created the war, that caused this incredible cenotaph, and to just pause.
This year, the cenotaph will watch over its 100th Remembrance Day. A Port Coquitlam woman has been keeping her fingers busy ahead of Remembrance Day, crocheting hundreds of poppies to raise money for her local Legion while paying tribute to her family members who served. Take a look.
It started in 2017. I started as a favor to a coworker. It started in New West, and the idea I had in mind was donating 100% of the proceeds to the Royal Canadian Legion. Since then, it's been in over 25 different businesses. You name it, it's been in florist shops, bakeries, breweries, and 100% of the proceeds go to the Royal Canadian Legion, so they're going to the Poppy campaign in Port Coquitlam. Branch 133. My great-grandfather, he served in the World War II. And then my great-grandfather, he served in the Queen's Own Rifles. And this is my uncle here, the baby. And he served with the artillery in New Brunswick. You have to kind of have a certain tightness to it as well. And then in the very end, this part that looks loose will tighten at the end. It makes me pretty happy just seeing that someone's donating and is really enjoying the poppy, because a lot of people see my poppy and they're like, oh, we have the same one, and they don't know I'm the person that makes them, but it just makes me excited that I talk to them about their experience with it, or if people just kind of want to chat in emails after Remembrance Day. It's just something small that I can do to pay tribute to my family and to those that serve our country and who have served, including their families. It's just something small that I can do to give back.
Still ahead, family, friends, and dignitaries celebrated the late Murray Sinclair in Winnipeg today. He is the first Indigenous leader to be given a national commemorative ceremony. That's next. Stay with us. What little hope may have existed for a resolution to a labor dispute that's crippling operations at BC ports was short-lived this weekend after talks with federal mediators broke down. They joined 1,200 dock workers at the Port of Montreal who are also now locked out after rejecting a proposed deal tonight. Vanessa Lee has more on the work stoppages at Canada's two busiest shipping ports.
Yeah, we can only make as many water filters as we have glass tanks.
This BC water filtration company is at a near standstill until it receives its next shipment. Santa Via relies on glass tanks imported from China.
This coming week, we won't have any inventory to be able to manufacture.
It's one of many Canadian businesses anxiously waiting for containers at the Port of Vancouver to start moving again.
And we're a very small business. We're 25 staff only. And so this has a pretty large financial impact for us. We're losing $10,000 to $15,000 a day in lost sales.
Talks between the BC Maritime Employers Association and the union representing 700 locked-out foremen restarted Saturday with the help of federal mediators, but they were short-lived. The dispute is holding up $800 million worth of goods every day at Canada's largest port. On the heels of rail strikes, it's the latest in a long line of labor disputes the Canadian Chamber of Commerce says has hurt the country's economy and international reputation.
Unfortunately, this growing trend of labor disruptions is advertising that supply chain issues are something of a way of life here, especially over the last couple of years. And this puts contracts for Canadian businesses at risk.
And there may soon be even more backlogs. Port of Montreal workers are also locked out after rejecting the latest offer. The union says schedules and work-life balance are at the heart of the impasse, adding the two sides have not been at the bargaining table since the end of September. The port moves nearly $400 million in cargo daily. Bulk grain exports aren't affected. On top of the uncertainty at the country's busiest ports, Canadians face another potential stoppage, a looming strike at Canada Post. The Retail Council of Canada says businesses are bracing for what they're calling an unprecedented triple threat labor disruption just ahead of the busy holiday season. Vanessa Lee, CBC News, Montreal.
Donald Trump and Joe Biden will meet this Wednesday, an opening step in the eventual transition at the White House. It's one of a flurry of announcements this weekend surrounding Trump's impending return to power. The CBC's Katie Simpson reports.
President Joe Biden spending the weekend away from the White House as he prepares to leave it for good.
Mr. President, come talk to us.
Committing to a peaceful transfer of power, he'll sit down with his successor this week.
And then they will go through the top issues, both domestic and foreign policy issues. And the president will have the chance to explain to President Trump how he sees things.
Nice to be with you.
On Russia, Donald Trump reportedly telling President Vladimir Putin not to escalate the war in Ukraine during a call Thursday just now being disclosed. The Republican Party is divided over the war, as some lawmakers have advocated against U.S. support for Ukraine.
The American people want sovereignty protected here in America before we spend our funds and resources protecting the sovereignty of another nation.
Trump himself campaigned on ending the conflict within 24 hours of taking office.
I believe I will be able to make a deal between President Putin and President Zelensky.
Trump is now finalizing his inner circle, cutting out prominent Republicans who've criticized him in the past. Writing on his social media platform, "I will not be inviting former Ambassador Nikki Haley or former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to join the Trump administration." With his clear win, including a sweep of all 7 swing states, Trump is looking to make good on his pledges to voters.
They have given President Trump a resounding mandate to deliver on the promises that he made on the campaign trail. The American people are done with these far progressive policies. They want common sense.
Trump's spokesperson says there will be multiple executive orders ready to go the day he takes office, most related to immigration and security at the southern U.S. border. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
Murray Sinclair, the man who headed Canada's Truth and Reconciliation Commission, was honored today in Winnipeg at a national commemorative ceremony. The CBC's Brittany Greenslade reports.
Murray Sinclair was an Indigenous force, a celebrated elder, judge, and senator who made history.
My father's most enduring gift is that he loved this country and all of its complicatedness.
Remembered by his son at this national commemorative ceremony in Winnipeg, the first ever held to honor an Indigenous leader.
That he was often the lone voice of dignity against a wall of callousness.
Sinclair died on November 4th at age 73. Here he was celebrated, sometimes with laughter, often through tears.
Tears of gratitude for such an amazing human being that was able to describe a complex situation with everyday, down-to-earth, simple words.
An Anishinaabe lawyer, Sinclair broke barriers. He was the first Indigenous judge in Manitoba. But he's best known for leading the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, helping Canadians to confront the country's dark past.
Murray has brought us together. He's brought our whole country together.
Sinclair not only listened, he made sure survivors were heard.
His leadership was not just about asking for the truth, but demanding it.
Many spoke of his strength and his compassion.
When his kindness and his courage to speak out in that bubble in Ottawa where we work was so outstanding.
The ceremony itself seen as proof of progress.
We don't have a long history of Canada recognizing Indigenous greatness in its midst.
His legacy and life's work now left up to Canadians to continue.
Though we have lost our teacher, we have not lost his teachings.
Brittany Greenslade, CBC News, Winnipeg.
This is Vancouver is a new CBC podcast where we explore the issues, the stories, and the people that make this place home. Listen to This is Vancouver wherever you get your podcasts.
Well, here's a dose of positivity. A Jasper family and the entire town really is celebrating the return of a beloved cat after it spent 100 days alone in the wilderness around Valemount.
Overall, he's looking good, and he's hungry all the time.
Felix, the cat's family evacuated Jasper at the end of July because of the wildfire. They took refuge at a cabin south of Valemount where he escaped. Klopfenstein searched for Felix for a month without any luck. She returned home without him but didn't give up hope. Finally, someone in Valemount spotted him last week sunbathing in a marsh south of the small town. Now that Felix is back in her arms, Klopfenstein says she's marveling at the cat's journey.
He had to travel down a dirt road paralleling train tracks for about 2 or 3 kilometers. He hit Highway 5. He had to go across roads. He had to go through ditches. At one point, he had to cross Highway 5. He had to cross a bridge over Swift Creek. He had to get to Valemount, and then he had to continue on to the marsh.
Felix is half his body weight, but slowly recovering. Klopfenstein says people in Jasper are flooding her with messages, grateful to know the cat is back, safe and sound. That is your late news for Sunday, November 10th. Thank you so much for watching. Join us tomorrow for our live Remembrance Day coverage from 10 a.m. to 11:30. You can also catch it on our streaming channel, website, and social media. Have a great night.